will move on to our second semi-final of the weekend, which also happens on Saturday at 3:30 in Sandy Park. And the referee
wild kickoff times, by the way.
Yeah, I know, they overlap. They're like
first game is 2 o'clock, next game is 3:30. Decent for TV audiences, they'll be back to back. But in terms of UK time, pretty early, not exactly prime time.
No, indeed.
But sure, look.
Yes, indeed. Well, we have Exeter v Toulouse in Sandy Park, as I say. Two serious teams. Exeter sitting top of the Premiership at the moment, and
their first ever European semi-final. First
it
ever Champions Cup semi-final.
It is.
Sure, anyway.
It is Exeter's first ever Champions Cup semi-final. It ain't Toulouse's first rodeo with the 4 stars they have on their jersey, but its home advantage is very much with the English on that one. Just looking at the quarter-finals, Toulouse absolutely trounced a rather haphazard Ulster side in France. It was 36-8 in the end to Toulouse. And Exeter also trounced another kind of not great looking side, Northampton, who kind of threatened to make a game of it in the first 10 minutes but didn't actually score anything, and therefore didn't, and it ended up being a 38-15 win for Exeter. Pretty routine against most Premiership sides, Sarries notwithstanding, but that's normally what Exeter do. So yeah, 2 one-sided quarterfinals. Definitely kind of not the most intense games either, I think.
No, by no means.
By no means.
Neither side really had to leave second gear.
Yeah, second or maybe third. If you want to give Northampton some credit, and maybe Exeter got out of third gear to see them off, but like not top quality stuff. It will be a lift in intensity this weekend, regardless of what happens, because they're 2 quality sides matching up against each other. And just a few little stats by Toulouse are the last unbeaten side remaining in this year's competition. They went 6 from 6 in the group stages and then won their quarterfinals, so 7 from 7. Statistically, then we have 87.94 in percent scrum success in favour of Toulouse, which is kind of surprising. Toulouse have the more scrum success than Exeter this year.
Yeah, well, there you go. What did we say about scrum?
We did say it's
Toulouse may have more scrum success. They do not have better scrum. A better scrum than Exeter. So
that's an interesting one. Pretty even on goal kicking, line out success in around the 90th percentile for line out. Actually, goal kicking is edged rather dramatically by Exeter, 97% versus 89%. So 97% is a freakishly high stat.
They get every kick.
One. They just get every kick. Both 97% on ruck success, 85-84 percent tackle success in favour of Exeter.
Do you know what contributes to the kicking success as well, though, is the fact that Exeter never take penalties from corners, because they're always going to the corner
for sure. It's only a percentage, so that's definitely true. Surprisingly, to me anyway, Exeter are edging it on points and tries scored for the tournament so far.
But they own the game. It's not that they don't attack. It's that the sides are very, very different.
Yes.
This for me is the ultimate sort of styles make fights.
Yes,
game of rugby that we're looking at here. We have the sort of this smothering, if you want to look at MMA, sort of wrestler type against this sort of flashy striker type in Toulouse.
Well, I think the one stats are, I was just going to rattle these off, but the one stat that illustrates that point is offloads. Like Toulouse have been averaging more carries, passes and offloads per game than them, but the offloads especially, Exeter average about 4.8 offloads per game, Toulouse are up at 12.5, which is and serious amount of offloading.
Exeter will offload less than that in a game that's tight as well.
Yes, indeed.
They sometimes get flashy when they're dominating a game, but for the most part their identity is to be tight and physical. And so it's very interesting in that regard when you have this team that's going to just attack from everywhere versus this team that likes to slow the pace right down, do these long caterpillar rucks in their own half, put up a bomb of a box kick, chase it up, put pressure on you, own the contact area, defend sharply, and then when they get the ball, suck the life and tempo out of the game until you're just so tired and concussed from making so many tackles that they fall over the line, and the next time you get the ball, you're shattered and you don't know what to do with it.
It's true.
So there's that dynamic is fascinating, and it'll be curious to see who gets on top of it. We're going to take a look at this game through the same framework we did the last. We're going to start with Exeter. What are they looking to do with and without the ball? But first, just what are they looking to do with attack when they have the ball?
As far as Exeter are concerned, you kind of outlined it very well. They're looking to have the slower tempo game, but they're going to look to utilise their huge pack. They have a very, very big pack. Well drilled forwards are just going to try and win collisions and gain momentum first, regardless of where they are in the pitch. Even if they're setting up a box kick, that's normally their MO to do it. They have been a bit more varied this season. I'll give credit where it's due. In the middle of the field, in the middle third of the field, they have mixed it up. Slade is a really good conduit for some attacking play in the 13 channel. He takes some of the kicking responsibilities off their halfbacks because they'll kick from 13 for exits, and they have Stewie Hogg even further out, so they have a lot of
Hogg and Noel in the back three is very offensive as well.
Yes, and they have been utilising them. They have a few good strike plays off set piece in the middle third of the pitch that they'll definitely try and do. But for me, really, it's when they actually get into the 22, like Georgia. Actually, that's when the real Exeter rugby starts. That's what Chiefs rugby is just hold the pill in the 22. Just demand tackles of your opposition by just picking and going. Doesn't matter if it's 30 phases. And they have been slightly better at recognising the space when they've sucked the men in this season than they had been in seasons gone by. It's not always just the pick and jam try, but that is their first port of call. They can spread it to the wide and finish it with wingers like Tom O'Flaherty and Noel do pick off their fair share of tries for them.
Last season, Leinster actually put together the painting of how to beat this Toulouse team. I don't think they've recruited well enough up front. In fact, they're one man weaker. They're down in Elstad since Leinster played them, and they have no more recruitments except for Kino, who's now a year older. So their pack is largely the same as the pack that fell to Leinster twice last season. They fell once, and then they had a long time to think about dealing with it, and they came and lost to the exact same game plan in Dublin last year. And that was a very Exeter model performance from Leinster. It was slow, it was physical,
30 plus phases a lot of the time.
But it was possession. We owned the ball. We had little varied moves, but we owned the ball and we owned the collisions. And Toulouse, while they have a very flashy, brilliant backline, their pack can get leggy, and they can get very lost when they get starved of the ball.
Like many attacking teams, they don't like defending for long
periods. And they don't have too many poachers in their pack in terms of getting ball at the breakdown. So it can be an easy enough task to sort of hold the ball, bludgeon them, work them up front, and then kill them by a million carries. And then the next time they get the ball, they're so shattered, they're sort of a little leggy, and they're not themselves. That very much is the Exeter model, obviously, when they get into the Toulouse 22. But one of the things that I think they should consider, especially with their attacking weapons, is not necessarily kicking it to Toulouse off the box kick exits. I certainly wouldn't try and kick the ball to Cheslin Kolbe. First of all, if you get the kick wrong, he's one of the best wingers in the world. He could punish you and score a try in an instant. Second of all, he's actually lethal in the air.
Yes, he does have a serious leap on him. He may be vertically challenged, but he actually compensates by getting so high in the air.
He's lethal in the air, and you're just giving Toulouse the ball back, which is exactly the picture you don't want. So what I would really love to see from Exeter, obviously we know their game plan. If they get any kind of possession in the Toulouse half, they're going to hold it, they're going to bludgeon, they're not going to take too many risks because they're going to back themselves to edge the contacts against Toulouse and bludgeon them to a slow death. That's going to be the Exeter plan. Maybe milk a penalty, kick it in the corner, restart until you get a try. But in terms of their exit, in terms of when they have the ball in their own half, I'd love to see them get the ball in Slade's hand. I'd love to see them test the defensive nous of Gatun at 13. Aki is obviously a really tough bugger at 12 for Toulouse, but Gatun is very much more offensive minded than defensive minded, as well as this whole team are.
For sure.
But getting him going backwards, making him feel physicality early on. That could be a very nice picture for Exeter, and making their backs make tackles as well as their forwards. I would love to see them move the ball a bit more out of their own half, and I think they should, because I think the way to beat this Toulouse team is to starve them off the ball, and I don't think they actually have the tools in their locker to prevent you from doing it.
Well, and I actually think as far as their strengths, like Maunder and Simmons, the halfbacks for Exeter, are quite decent players without being spectacular. But they do have littered throughout the back line in Noel and Slade and Hogg at fullback, and even O'Flaherty is just proper danger and proper exiting options. Like, you can go pass Slade kick, you can go pass Hogg kick for an exit. You don't have to box kick it every time. So variation from their own half as far as that's concerned will be key. They do tend to throw the ball around a little bit, as we said, in that middle third. They're confident enough doing it.
Yeah.
It's only really when it gets to the 22 that they kind of revert more into that pick and jam shape. But like, it might be nice to see them just hold the ball even a little bit in their own 10-meter. It like you don't want to like try and kill it necessarily. There is a risk of going off your feet and getting pinged for a penalty. But you're right in saying the blueprint has been laid for how to beat this Toulouse side, and it's one that Exeter will relish, because it's just hold the ball, demand they make tackles, force them to go through phases. It's their best form of defence, and we'll go through their defence when they don't have the ball. But the best way to defend Toulouse is to not give them the ball.
Yeah, and kick on your own terms. Setting up the caterpillar rucks and box kicking, maybe it'll work. Maybe they'll put, you know, Jack Noel will put Huge, for example, under enough pressure that he stuffs the ball. Or Ramo, who's the fullback. But I just think in general it's a high tariff game, and I think if they move the Toulouse team defence around, force them to make a few tackles, resource their rucks well, they might be able to kick a little more on their own terms, get the ball in behind Toulouse, force them to kick and exit, and then set up an offence. I just think that's a better approach, with less risk involved than the box kicking approach, where you're running the risk of Cheslin Kolbe making a serious play, taking the ball with the hands over the heads, going forward, and then all of a sudden speed, Toulouse have the ball. And that sort of brings us to what Exeter need to be looking at in those instances when Toulouse have the ball. Their first port of call is going to be limiting them, trying to limit the areas where they do get the ball, but they do need to be hyper conscious that when Toulouse have the pill, this is the most dangerous time of the game.
They're a razzle-dazzle team. They are more threat than more pace than Exeter face at all in the Premiership. Like, we've seen this Exeter team struggle with Gloucester when they move the pill. Toulouse is a different animal as far as moving the pill from Gloucester. Like, they really, really do appreciate space, and they know how to attack. To a man, they know how to draw and give. And they know how to flood channels with players and overload short sides with runners, which is something that this Exeter side have definitely been susceptible to short side forays in over the season as well. They've been caught napping on the blind side. Toulouse love flooding small channels, like all French teams, small little congested channels with lots of players.
No, the Dupont will make a break, and Kano will be on his shoulder, and Cheslin Kolbe will be on his shoulder, and if you don't shut that down instantly, it's a try.
Exactly.
And that is the danger with Toulouse. They have danger all over. Their two centres, Aki and Gatun, are so underrated in how they link Dupont and that back three. They're actually really, really clever attacking players. So from an Exeter point of view, the first port of call obviously is always in that tight area. They are nice and physical. They do have the bigger, stronger, much more organised pack. They need to be making
probably the fitter pack on balance as well. Like I'd expect big Charlie Famuina to have maybe 50 minutes in him before he's completely gassed.
Well, and we'll get on the set piece, and that's an area of real concern for Toulouse as well. But in terms of Exeter on D, obviously dominating those tight collisions, but spreading themselves a little wider, I think, is key. Covering
Keep your feet. Don't compete unless there's a turnover there, and get bodies on their feet in the defensive
But also
line.
just like you can go man on man in the tight areas pretty comfortably. It's just not how Toulouse want to play. And you know, Francois Croix, these guys, they're decent players, but Exeter will back themselves one-on-one to win those contacts. So maybe there's license to move someone like a Simmons or someone, a back rower, into the wider channels to cover that sort of threat that Toulouse are going to constantly have. And then I think the performance of Devoto, whether it's Devoto or Witten at 12 along with Slade, is going to be key, and that's going to involve, you know, essentially putting Ntamak under so much pressure that he can't get his centres involved, that he can't access that back three that's so dangerous. Toulouse will like to stand deep and move it wide, and it's important that when Toulouse are super deep, that they don't fly up, because you're not going to be able to cover that space in time. So in those instances, you're coming up as a line, you're drifting across, you're not giving them any space in the wide channels. Leave more space on the inside channels. Be sure to tackle man on ball, smother Ntamak every chance you get, because he is their weak point. He gets raved about in media and everything else, but Ntamak is not. He's not as good as the players around him. Dupont
is key. Like, as much as you say, leave space on the inside. Pillars don't go wandering, or guards.
That's not what I mean.
I know. I know exactly what you mean. But I'm saying as well, you have the temptation to kind of fan out and cover that space. Don't let the pillar go wandering either, because English teams are guilty of it, and I'm convinced it's because they call them guards, not pillars. Guards go walkabout, pillars stay put.
Yes,
pillars on
either defenders either side of the ruck have to stay put,
and because Dupont will spy that instantly and cast them out. If Toulouse are going wide and fanning them out. Like, they just need to be aware. They need to keep their shape. Keep men on their feet. Don't compete unless there's a genuine chance at stealing the ball or slowing the ball. And only have a few selective people that they will have go in. Like, they do have some good turnout, chop and poach kind of players. Cowan-Dickey and Simmons and Vermeulen and Ewers. And even actually Harry Williams has a steal or two in him as well. They're kind of very difficult to move. It's going to be a simple chop and poach kind of game. If you're all on your feet and your defensive line has its integrity, then just one-on-one chop and poach. They will try and stymie Toulouse that way and force a kick or force some loose play.
Well, if they're forcing kicks, they're in great shape.
That's the business for them.
Obviously, they have the likes of Stuart Hogg as well and Jack Noel, who they deploy sparingly, but can be lethal playing heads-up rugby. That back three can be as lethal as anybody with Flaherty in there as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So if they're forcing loose kicks out of Toulouse, that is definitely a good picture for Exeter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of good pictures for Exeter, we're going to take a look now at the set piece in this game.
Yes, indeed.
Starting with the scrum, and this is an area that could be make or break for Toulouse. I mean, at the start of last week, in the Toulouse match against Ulster, they were actually struggling a little with Ulster Scrum, and Ulster Scrum is one of the weakest in the Pro 14, which is the weakest league in Europe by far. So that the amount of level that they're going to be stepping up to go into this Exeter scrum,
the Exeter scrum
that makes good scrums look atrocious. They have six world-class scrummaging front row players that they're going to be deploying in the 23. Last week they went with Hepburn and Harry Williams starting in prop, and then they have Ben Moon and Thomas Francis to come on.
They could rotate those guys. They could Cowan-Dickey as well is just such a classy operator and a really aggressive scrummager. They do scrum as an 8, and they're very effective at it. They're a set piece kind of team. They're a bits and pieces team, but Rob Baxter really does have them well drilled, and they can launch off of either scrum or line out maul. They will be looking to try and tie up Toulouse forwards in both of those areas and try and get a nudge on. Toulouse will be looking for parity.
Meanwhile, Toulouse has Cyril Byatt, Loosehead, and Big Charlie Femuina still trying to lock the scrum down from Tighthead. And he doesn't have many minutes in him these days. They got a couple of young sort of rookie-ish guys covering the props. This is going to be an area where if I'm Rob Baxter, I'm thinking this is where we should really attack.
It's a big responsibility for the engine room as well, because Takori and Arnold are a big physical engine room that they have there. They need to be playing their part in locking the scrum down. They need to scrum cohesively. They are sometimes guilty of switching off, and Exeter are very good at spotting those kinds of times. If it's at 50 minutes in the match or something and the props are kind of wayward and aghast and someone's getting treatment and then we're out of time off and you know that the resumption of play is a scrum, I'd back Exeter to be the ones to pounce on that scrum and grab a penalty no matter whose feet it is, more so than I'd back Toulouse. Toulouse have to try and get parity in that area, in that set piece, and then make it about a different thing. They don't want it about scrums. If the game becomes about scrum penalties, that's a game that Exeter are winning, particularly in Sandy Park.
At line out, I don't expect too much. I don't expect Toulouse to go to the maul at all.
No,
but I think Toulouse
they might shape to do a maul before they peel it.
I think Toulouse have a sharp enough line out that they won't be too disrupted by Exeter. I do think that Exeter will go to the line out maul when they're in the red zone, and that's just about it. But Exeter aren't even too concerned with their line out maul. If it doesn't work, they'll just set up their possession attack and go again and again.
Very often when they're in the 22, they won't kick to the corner. They will tap and go. They're one of those teams that will tap and go and set up a ruck.
The scrum is huge, and the scrum could be the loss of the game for Toulouse. It could be that way.
That's what I'm saying. If there are penalties at scrum time, if there are to be many of them, because who's reffing it? Did we say
Andrew
Brace? Yeah, he will ping if they're getting on top. I think he will. Certainly if the picture is just buckling by the end, that
he's not as bad as Nige at not giving penalties, but he can be. So a lot of these refs don't look at scrums. Just don't look at literally don't look at scrums. They stand and look the other way and hope.
Look at the ball, point to the ball.
There it is.
What about the mush that's happening in the front row? It doesn't matter.
But look, onward.
We digress.
And we're going to just take a look at Toulouse now.
Toulouse, the away side. Obviously, it's tough enough in Sandy Park that will play, even without the fans. That will be a factor. It's a slightly muddier pitch than what they were playing on last week against
Ulster.
Decent
nick. Hope it's not a mud ball they're walking into.
No, it's not a mud ball, but it's a slower. The climate's different. It's a slightly damper, slightly slower pitch. The pace of play will be slightly lower, which doesn't suit Toulouse. That being said, tempo. That's got to be the Toulouse game. Same as what we were saying for Racing against Sarries. It's a similar dynamic. Big English pack. You want to move them around the park. You don't want to be. You don't want the focus to be on collision points in the tight.
You don't want rucks.
You don't really want rucks.
One of the things,
they keep the ball alive better than most.
One of the things that was, I'm sure anybody who follows European rugby would have seen the other week. They scored a try against Clermont with 13 men that started with Ramos instead of taking his medicine and taking a line out 5, doing a between the heels pass on his own line that went about 15 metres and cleared the space, and they went from there and scored a try.
Yeah.
They have danger all over the park. The offensive instincts of Dupont, of Aki, of Gitoun, of Kolbe, of Houget,
of Kaino,
of Kaino.
Kaino, who's been hanging out in the wide channels making passes.
And Ramo as well. That the offensive instincts of those guys are so sharp that it's just they have such a wonderful read off each other that they're going to challenge Exeter and show that Exeter defence just a level of jouet that they just wouldn't experience in the Premiership. The closest they get is Gloucester, who are the team who've shocked Exeter in times gone by recently. But Toulouse are just going to take it to another level, constantly moving it wide, constantly flooding channels with loads and loads of players, keeping the ball alive. If you're stuck, throw it backwards to Dupont, who's just going to whip it the other way. Keep probing for weak contacts. Take a ruck when you have to, but clear it super quickly. As you say, tempo, but also just reading each other, running support lines.
Support lines is really where they are the best in Europe, I think. I think Toulouse's support running is on another level compared to it because it's that jouet, and it affords them the opportunity to normally you want a 10 taking it to the line. Actually, Ntamak tends to sit a little deeper just so that the blitz defence isn't effective. They can go backwards wide, as long as they're going wide and probing. They can get outside defences that way. They're very, very good at it. They genuinely, keeping the ball alive, avoiding breakdowns and contacts in general will be a way to just fracture what is a very structured, organised defence in Exeter. Try and force them to kind of shut down and play one side, and before there's even a breakdown or an offside line, it's over somewhere else.
One of the things they did so well against Ulster as well is having both Gitoun and Aki run after they break the line, having the next phase being a sharp line picked off 9 by Aki or Gitoun, and they mixed that up, and they got so much purchase out of Ulster once they won a contact. Dupont cleared it, and all of a sudden it looks like they're going wide, and back against the grain comes one of those sharp centres. They mix that up so well, and then once the line break happens, tries there, because everybody's dialed in to finding the try once the line break happens.
Exactly.
And that's the key. That is the key. Shocking Exeter with a level of offence that they haven't seen yet. It's all offence for Toulouse.
Exactly. All out attack is how it has to be, because it is their best recipe for success. It's their best recipe for scores. It's going to shock Exeter. It's kind of bringing the game to them. Another recipe for them as well is just get Kolbe one-on-one. Get him one-on-one with anyone. Even 2-on-1 is good odds. He normally scores tries in that scenario, but one-on-one, if you can manage to manufacture
can Jack Noel contain him?
It's a good question. They're both very similar builds, and he's also very combative, but they're both very prickly, combative customers, like kind of short man syndrome, very physical. It's a great matchup. They're two international, world-class caliber wingers, and they're both gritty. I do give Kolbe the edge in terms of just that X factor. But Noel, I probably give the edge as far as just meanness, which is something similar, parallels between this Exeter side and this Toulouse side. Maybe a bit more razzle-dazzle and X-Factor in Toulouse, but undoubtedly probably a more well-drilled side in Exeter. They know their function, know their roles inside out and backwards, know how to get things done. So for Toulouse, they need to play to their own strengths. They need to not get suckered into an arm wrestle at all. Hopefully they'll have gleaned learnings, as much as we were saying Exeter have had the blueprint painted by Leinster's dominant performance over them last year. As much as they'll have learned from that, you'd hope that Toulouse have kind of learned from that as well. And
one of the things that Toulouse haven't done is acquired a real poacher.
No, they don't.
And sort of moving on to what they need to do, because I think that the bulk of this game is going to be spent not with Toulouse having the ball, but with Exeter having the ball. And how do they deal with that without knackering themselves
or
out
giving
and,
away
and
cheap
conceding
penalties,
inevitable tries, and constantly just never being able to have the ball on their terms, having everything go against them and not being able to do anything against it. It's tough. They know exactly what Exeter are going to bring, but you've got to bring some physicality yourself. You've got to see guys like Jerome Kaino, Francois
or Joe Takori getting big, smashing and rips kind of thing.
Yeah,
if he can attack the pill in the contact, for sure. If he can dislodge it, they are excellent off turnovers. That is if they can dislodge an extra pill and then whip it, flash it wide and score a try. That's obviously a winning picture for it, because they, as you say, they don't have any kind of experts in breakdown turnovers.
No.
But they are very, very good at capitalising on turnover ball if they can force it. And they do have a good defensive pressure that yields some turnover tries in the top 14. Question mark is, like, with a well-organised, well-drilled...
The likes of Francois Croix and the likes of Jerome Kino step up to the degree.
Rory Arnold,
Cyril Bay. If they can just, attack the pill, stop Exeter at source, frustrate them and contain them, and then when they get the ball, strike. If they can limit Exeter to really having to work for their scores and then respond with scores themselves, that sort of is the Toulouse picture. But I actually think it's a really, really tough job for their defence in terms of how to contain them. And I think the angle that they should be shooting for is, as you point out, maybe trying to go for strips, constantly attacking the ball, frustrating the Exeter forward carriers, although they're very good at retaining
possession and retaining possession and holding the pill. It'll be interesting that, like, discipline will be put to the test if they are kind of a team like New Zealand as well. If the conventional wisdom is, if you hold it for 10 phases against them, they'll probably cough up a penalty because they just don't like defending. Just on a philosophical level, and Exeter will be looking to kind of capitalise on that for sure. So Toulouse need to be aware of it, and it's a big job for Aki and Gatun to try and shut out the outside when they're in the middle third as well, because Exeter, as we said, will be trying to probe those channels. More so, it'll be a huge job for the people you said, the pack, who are probably outmatched, will need to step up to.
Well, one of the things that I said that, like, Toulouse might like, obviously they like turnover ball and transitions of ball, so when Exeter have it in their own half, if they are adventurous, as we suggest they should be, and they do move it wide, that's when Gatun and Aki really come into it. Can they shut Exeter out, and can they just force Exeter to do what they're comfortable to do, which is set up the box kick, put the bomb up, and then defuse the bomb and then go. That would be huge for Toulouse. And obviously discipline is so key, because if Exeter can set up camp in their half, all it takes is one penalty. They'll be there for 10 minutes from anywhere, and they'll be there for 10 to 15 minutes and end up with 7 points, and you bollocksed, and perhaps the game passed you. So that really is key for Toulouse. The margins are so tight, and if they make sloppy mistakes, they will be punished
for sure. So with all that said, who are you giving the edge to? It's a tough one to call.
It is a tough one to call. I mean, it sort of depends on my criteria for making the decision, in the sense of calling it. Like, we've gone through both teams and their conditions. Like, I think that Exeter have a far superior pack. I think that Exeter are so much more used to winning right now, that they look so comfortable within themselves. They have the formula down pat. Obviously Toulouse have the sharper attack, but is that going to be enough when, the old adage, forwards win games? If Exeter's pack is that much on top, as I think they should and perhaps will be, that it should be, especially with home advantage, a straightforward call for Exeter. But I'm giving pause. I'm giving pause.
Toulouse have 4 stars on their jersey.
That's what I was going to say. I'm giving pause because of the record that Exeter have had in Europe, even for the last number of years when they've been going so strong in the Premiership. They've always floundered in Europe. They're going to feel the pressure on themselves more than anything else, because they have a real opportunity to win it this year. They'll feel they're in the semi-final, which they've never been to. They could set up a game against Saracens, which would be the ultimate grudge match of all grudge matches for a European final. And then they have this team in Toulouse who have won it 4 times, who are European royalty, who play beautiful offensive football, and all it could take from a Toulouse point of view is an early score or two, and then all of a sudden Exeter's demons in Europe return and emerge, and all of a sudden drop balls come, and
maybe they're not as primed. They got whooped by Sarries. Their A team got whooped by Sarries going in. Northampton were not really good opposition in the quarter-final.
Well, I think if anyone is more primed, it should be the team that's been playing the more rugby, which is especially with the amount of squad rotation they've afforded themselves. Like Saracens, they come into the game really
more sharp,
with exactly as much game time as they want. Where Toulouse have really had to hit the ground running. And the other thing I'd say is Toulouse did not look sharp in terms of their physicality and their tempo against Ulster. They were led away. Even
their execution, they coughed up a few tries. Like, they ended up racking a very impressive score, considering the performance actually wasn't as good as all that. But Ulster again were quite as bad as Northampton were. Ulster weren't great opposition either in the quarter final.
Gun to my head, I can see both pictures. I can see them very clearly. Gun to my head, I think Exeter, and I think an all English final. For a few reasons, but I think they're more primed, more well conditioned. I think it just the timing of these semi-finals suits the English teams a little better than it does suit the French teams. And I think they have a pack that should beat that Toulouse pack up from minute 1 to minute 80.
Fair enough.
And I think that might be what happens.
Yeah, I think you might be right. But however, I'm going to vote with my heart and say, come on, Toulouse. I think Toulouse are going to get it done.
The scores.
I think it's going to be an England v France final, and I don't see Sarries losing, so I'm going to say Toulouse are the ones to win it.
Yeah, listen, fair enough.
Thank you very much for watching that video. If you're new here, please like and subscribe down below, and leave a comment as well, because we enjoy the chat and conversation. Thank you.